Start करू सुरुवात Okay. A very good morning to all of you. I am Rachna Adsule from 16158P, an academic counselor in Dhule. Today I am going to discuss with you the course code MSW006, which pertains to research. So I'll give you a brief orientation in 1 hour, whatever is possible. Now, there is just one request that if you have any questions, you can put it down in the chat box. But the questions should only be related to MSW006 and no other questions will be entertained. If you have any other questions, you please contact your study centers. Now, this particular course has got 4 blocks. Today we will discuss block 1 and block 2. Now, as far as block 1 is concerned, it is Introduction to Social Research. In block 1, there are 4 units. Unit 1 is Introduction to Social Work Research. Unit 2 is Research Review in Social Work. Unit 3 is Research Process, which is Problem Formulation. And Unit 4 is again the research process, which includes preparing a research proposal. Now, as far as the block 2 is concerned, it is entitled Research Methods in Social Work. Again, here there are 4 units. In the first unit, we have Introduction to Methods of Social Work Research. Again, in the second unit, it is just an introduction. In the second unit, we discuss the various types of research methods, including descriptive, exploratory, diagnostic. Again, in the unit 3, we continue with the same research methods where we discuss the experimental designs. And unit 4 includes qualitative research, again, research methods. So on the whole, these 2 blocks generally will cover a brief introduction to what is research, what is social work research, what is the process of social work research, and what are the different methods of social work research. This is what we will do today. Now, as far as research is concerned, research pertains to a systematic and objective inquiry that utilizes research methods to solve problems or create knowledge which is generally applicable. Now, here there are 2 or 3 words which are very important. It is not just an inquiry, but it is a very systematic inquiry which follows a particular method and particular process. Another thing is it is an objective inquiry. It is not what you want or what you feel. So you have to keep aside your own biases, your own prejudices, and it has to be an objective inquiry as such. And what is the purpose? There can be 2 purposes. One is either to create knowledge theory. Second one is to resolve certain problems. Now, when knowledge can be either to increase the knowledge or to add to the existing knowledge. Again, it could be to various methods. It could be observation or any other method. Now, when we talk about scientific research, we first discuss scientific research and then social work research. So, scientific research is a systematic and critical investigation about the natural phenomena. And what the research tries to do is to explain and describe and understand the various relationships amongst the various factors in the natural phenomenon. Now, what scientific research does is, it starts from facts and then moves to creating theory or theorizing. It is where there are a set of concepts, definitions, which present a systematic view of the phenomena that is existing. And then from there, you go to predictions and you go to explaining the phenomena and the relations between the different factors that exist in the phenomena. Now, when we talk about scientific method, there are some basic steps that the scientific research follows. It's not just randomly doing whatever we feel like or whatever is convenient. It is rather a very systematic, organized, and methodical process where there can be first of all, there are three basic steps. One is systematic observation. Now, observation is done through different methods. Then the data, whatever is obtained, is classified and then it is interpreted. The major characteristics of scientific research are objectivity, which I've already told you what objectivity is. Second is verifiability, which means that if you've done a research, it is possible to verify it. Which means that if I combine hydrogen and oxygen in a particular proportion, water is prepared. Whether I do it today, tomorrow, day after, whenever, if the proportion is same, then water only has to be the outcome of the research. So that is verifiability. Replication is that if I do it here, I can do it anywhere else. It's not as if here I will get different results and in America I will get different results. So scientific research is very, very, structured and very rigid in that sense. And also prediction, which means that if I do some research, I can predict certain future phenomena. Now that is as far as scientific research is concerned. But now when we talk about social work research, we do not deal with chemicals and we do not carry out research in laboratory conditions. No, we deal with human beings. We talk about relationships. We talk about human behavior. So all these things are not something which we can, say that A plus B is equal to C, which means that if I have a problem today, and I may react to it in a different manner, but if someone else has the same problem, that person may not react to the problem in the same way. So that is why here what is important is that we're trying to deal with human behavior, human issues, and human problems. So here what we try and do, we try and see that whether we can analyze, understand any associations, any causal effect behavior. If this problem is there, this is the effect, or if this intervention is there, this is the effect. So in that sense, it is social research is very different from scientific research. Now, what social work research tries to do is it tries to seek answers, one, to various problems, second, also to various interventions. Now, as you have all done, this is the sixth course. So you have finished all the methods. So you know now when we talk about community organization, there are different models of community organization. And then once you start working, supposing I start working today, after 5 years, it is important to understand how effective my work has been, or how if what has been the usefulness of this work. So that is also done, or that is also understood through the process of a very systematic research. Social work research focuses on the different interventions of social workers in terms of individuals, groups, families, communities, even NGOs, their programs, and various agencies. So, this is the scope of social work research. Social work research is very important because social work research begins with theory, moves on to practice, and then after practice, the third step in the continuum is research. So through research, we try and find out some solutions to problems, some whether interventions are effective or no, and whether what could be the possible interventions. So we also draw new theories and new models of intervention with the help of research. So in that sense, research plays an extremely important role as far as social work is concerned. Um, up till now, generally research was carried out in a very traditional way, where we used to use survey designs and conduct surveys, and then using those surveys, results were drawn. But now, what has happened is there has been a lot of shift, and all besides the traditional methods of research, we also have a number of new ways where we talk about a lot of software that is being used in social research. There is the whole area of qualitative research which is being used. Now we are also dealing with individuals. We are conducting research at individual levels. We are doing case studies. We are doing focus group discussions. We are doing key informant interviews. So in that sense, there is a major shift from what the focus was earlier. Now, what we will do is we will try and see what is the importance of research in social work. One is, as I already had told you, that any research, the first function is that it adds knowledge. No, so the knowledge base. So what happens is we develop theory and we expand the social work knowledge base. We also research helps to address the gaps in knowledge. It adds voice to individuals because what earlier, as I told you, it was very traditional. Here every individual matters. So when we do case studies, we try and also understand how different humans, we give voice to humans expressions and their experiences, and we feel that each experience is important, and also that helps us also draw theories. Now, for example, we can conduct this case study of a particular organization and its contribution to the field of social work. When we're doing that, we're trying to understand what one single organization has done. And from that, can we draw certain theories? Can we draw certain knowledge base from that particular experience? So that is also an important area of research. Another very important thing is all of you are aware that social work is a practice based profession where all the theory that we learn is for the sole purpose of practicing. Whether it is group work, it is case work, it is research, whatever the theory, the soul and heart of social work is practice. So, one important area of function of research is also to improve the practice. It helps us develop solutions and to problems and applications in practice. It also helps us to develop new strategies of intervention. Whatever intervention we carry out in the field or whatever work we do, it also helps us to improve that and to upgrade our interventions, to develop new strategies, to develop new interventions. Now, I will have to move on a little fast because there is a number of things that I need to cover. So, in case there are any questions again, or if you've not understood, please put it in the chat box. Now, the next step is that we will understand what is the entire research process. As I already told you, it is not something random. It is a systematic process which utilizes different methods and strategies. When we talk about the research process, the first thing is to identify a research problem. Excuse me. Which is the first basic step in research. Unless there is a problem, what are we going to actually conduct research on? So the first step is to identify what area or what problem or what is the phenomenon under consideration on which I am going to conduct research. What is the question to which I need answers? So that question is a problem. The second step in the process of research is literature review. When we talk, what is review of literature? Review of literature is to understand what all is already there on that particular area on which we want to conduct research. Supposing I have chosen the area of problems faced by tribal children in education. So the second step would be to understand what all research studies have been done on that particular area or what is being published in that particular area. So whatever is existing, we need to review that. And after reviewing, we need to find out that gives us a base for our research. We will understand what is it that will support my research and what is it that there are gaps in and what is it that is not available in the existing literature. The third thing would be formulation of hypothesis. Now, it is not necessary or not compulsory to have a hypothesis, but if you want a study which has hypothesis, the next step would be to formulate a hypothesis, which we will look into each one of this in detail subsequently, but now I'm just telling you what are the different steps in research. The fourth is formulation of a research design. Once we have the problem, we have understood whatever literature is there, we've reviewed the literature, we have formulated a hypothesis. The second is to prepare a research design. Research design is a blueprint for your research, which gives you all the detail of how you're going to go about and how you're going to conduct the research. Once that is done, the next step is obviously to collect data. Without data, you cannot do research. So you will start collecting data. Once you've got all your data in place, what you need to do is to analyze and interpret the data. The once that is done, what you do is after you interpret the data, naturally you will prepare your report, and then the next step is generalizations. Now, what is generalizations? Generalization is, for example, I conducted a study for Minority Department, Government of India, where we were trying to understand the problems of minorities. Now, we were given a particular area, Bhiwandi, which is close to Mumbai. Now, the population of Bhiwandi is in crores. So, can I really go to each person and interview each person? That is just impossible. It will take, I don't know how many, 50 years, 60 years, or whatever. So, what we do is we conduct a sampling strategy where we say that all the sections of the society or whoever is important to us will be covered, and then we take representation from that particular universe or from that particular area or that particular population, and say we conduct study on 1,000 individuals and we get our results. That 1,000 findings of those 1,000 are then applicable, or that can be generalized to entire Bhiwandi. So that is what generalization means. Now, when we talk about research, conducting a research, after these are the steps. But when we say that we need to conduct a research, then when we first thing we need to do is to prepare a research proposal. Now, in the research proposal, as in the research process, I've already mentioned, the first thing that you need to mention is your problem identification. Second is literature review. Third, very important thing is your objectives. Fourth is hypothesis. If you have hypothesis, then if you do not have, it is perfectly fine. Then you have to operationalize your concepts. There will be certain important concepts that you will be using in your study. You need to define them well. You need to operationalize them. You need to say how those concepts will be interpreted in your particular study. Then you develop the research design, sample collection, data processing and analysis, presentation of the research report, and finally, you also need to put in the budget and the timeline in your resources. Budget does not necessarily mean only monetary budget, it also includes human resource. So, whatever resources you have at your disposal, that needs to come into your research proposal. Now, we move on to the first very important and the most basic step of research, which is formulation of the research problem. Now, this is extremely important because the entire research is based on formulation of your research problem. Now, this is what is a research problem? It is a question which a researcher wants to find a solution to, or a problem to which a researcher wants an answer. That is your research question. It is simply one statement that tells you about the relationship between two or more variables. For example, a research study could be impact of NGOs working in the field of housing in the city of Mumbai. Now, here, what are we trying to understand? We are trying to understand what is the impact that all the NGOs who are working in the housing sector have made in the city of Mumbai. So, what is their contribution? So, it is that simple a statement, but it is a very well defined problem. So, that is what a research problem is. Now, how do you identify a research problem? One thing is that there needs to be a lot of reading that needs to go before you actually formalize or you actually decide your research problem. What do you read? You read whatever is available on that particular topic. It could be the available literature, it could be reports, it could be research journals, it could be unpublished material. Whatever is available, you try and read that. It could be books, your internet. Now internet is a very common source of information. There could be other resources of information. It could be hard published matter, it could be unpublished matter, it could be newspapers. Whatever you can get hold of and whatever is available, you need to read that. Second thing is very important is you discuss with experts in that particular field. People who have been working in that area or who are knowledgeable about that problem. You need to also discuss your issue, whatever comes to your mind with that particular person. You also interview experts and you frame certain basic questions and interview them and try to get an in-depth understanding of that particular problem. And finally, of course, observation, very important. What are your observations on that particular issue? And only after you go through these steps, you formulate your problem. Now, while formulating your problem, you need to understand that it should be based on the SMART concept. Now, when I talk about SMART concept, S is specific. It should be very, very specific. Not your problem cannot be something which is general and you're trying to do 100 things at the same time. No. It should be very specific and very clear, and your research title should state what you're exactly going to do in your research. It should be measurable. Now, I say that the contribution of NGOs, but then if I'm not able, so I need to think that how am I going to measure it? What are my indicators? Even before I start doing my study or and crystallize my problem statement, I need to understand whether I will really be able to measure it. And if yes, how am I going to measure it? What are going to be the indicators of measurement? Third is whether it is achievable. When I talk about SMA, the next A is achievable. I have a particular time frame, whether in that particular time frame I will be able to complete it, or else what happens is I'm very if I am too optimistic and I'm very, very, I'll do this also, I'll do that also. If I try to say that, then probably the time and the resources may not be enough. I say that at the initial stage that I'm going to be complete my research in 2 years, but 10 years I'm still continuing that. So that should not happen. So it should be achievable. It should be realistic. Achievable and realistic are all interrelated. So not something that it is imaginary and it's a very ideal kind of a research, then I'm not able to achieve. Then there is frustration. Then you don't know what to do. So even before you start, you have to do this, and it should be T. The last is a smart of it is the last alphabet of smart is T, which is time specific. Any particular activity that you undertake, be it a project, be it a research, or even be it your course, everything is time specific. You like, for example, your MSW course is for 2 years. Can you say that it can continue for 20 years? No. So similarly, even research has to be very, very time specific. Then once your problem is formulated, you move on to literature review. As I told you that as far as literature review is concerned, it is you have to explore all that is available on that topic. Now you have formalized your topic, you have formulated your research problem, then you need to understand what is so because see, research is actually for creating new knowledge. If there is already something that exists on that particular topic, it is no use conducting research. So it should either add to it or fill in certain gaps or create new knowledge. So that is why literature review is very important. Also, it gives you a sound theoretical base for your research. Your research cannot be in air. It has to be supported by some theories, by some earlier research or some earlier literature that already exists. So this is your grounded theory, your literature review. So you need to do this step again very seriously. Whatever literature is available. See, so for example, my topic is the role or contribution of NGOs in the field of housing. You may not get something directly related to that, but you may get something where, okay, could be a particular agency who has collaborated with government and implemented government schemes. So you need to take on whatever is related. You need to understand what is the housing problem before you even move on to what is the role of housing. So when you do the literature review, it has to be everything concerning that, touching that particular area of your research. You may not get the matter directly related to your topic. Nonetheless, you have to still review whatever is there related to it. It could mean even the government interventions. So when you talk about government interventions, then you move on to NGOs. These are the government interventions and why NGOs need to be there. So, that kind of linkages. And then sometimes you may have to, even in literature review, you may include the various annual reports of various NGOs. So whatever is available in that particular area, you need to cover in your literature review. The next important step is your objectives. Unless your objectives are not clear, your results are not going to be as you expect them, or there is going to be a total confusion in your research. So that is, research is one of the most important and crucial areas of your research. Unless you do not know what you want to find out, you are not going to be able to reach to any conclusions. So, and your research will not contribute anywhere. So objectives need to be very, very specific. You need to conceptualize what you're actually going to study, and you need to put those concepts into exact words when you develop your objectives. You may have 3 objectives, 4 objectives, whatever is feasible. There is no limit, or there is no minimum number of objectives that a study needs to have. But whatever objectives you have need to be absolutely clear, because these will ultimately guide you in your data collection. Unless your objectives are not clear, you will not understand what data you need for your study. So objectives need to be specific, clear, and absolutely formalized in proper words. After objectives, the next step, as I told you, is hypothesis. Now, hypothesis is not compulsory in a research study. You may have hypothesis, you may not have hypothesis. But one thing you need to understand is that if you have an hypothesis, it is important to test the hypothesis. You cannot say that my study has an hypothesis, but I'm not going to test it. That is not possible. So, hypothesis is actually what it is. You have done your literature review, you have understood your problem. Based on that, you will draw your hypothesis, or you will formulate your hypothesis. Now, what is hypothesis? Hypothesis is trying to develop a concept where you try and measure relationships between 2 variables. Now, or any 2 factors in your study. For example, I may say that my hypothesis for I study with the example for which I had given you earlier, the contribution of NGOs in the field of housing. For that, my hypothesis may be that the NGOs who have collaborated with the government have contributed more to the problem of housing. That could be my hypothesis, and that depends on whatever. It doesn't. Its hypothesis is not what I want or what I feel. It is again based on certain facts and whatever theory is available. So based on that, my hypothesis is rested. So now what hypothesis does is it gives you a direction to your study, and it also helps you find answers to your problems. Now, the hypothesis, once it is done, you have to only take those hypotheses which you feel there is a probability of being correct. Now, it may so happen that 2 of your hypotheses, now how do you do hypothesis testing? At the end of the study, it is done through statistical methods. There are the various statistical tests that are available to test your hypothesis. Now, it may happen that 2 of your hypotheses are right and 2 may not be right, or all may be wrong, or 1 may be right, whatever it is. So there is then if it is an incorrect thing, you say that the hypothesis is a null or void hypothesis. If it is a valid hypothesis, it has to be confirmed through statistical tests. So that is what a hypothesis is. Now, operationalization of concepts. Again, when we talk, I just mentioned the word variables. Variables are the different factors in your study. For example, when I say that contribution of NGO, then I say that, okay, the contribution depends on the number of years that they have worked in the field. So number of years is what? An independent variable. But their contribution is a dependent variable, because one is dependent on the other. Now, when I talk about NGOs, again, I need to operationalize what I mean by NGOs. There could be a traditional definition of NGOs, but that may not be applicable to my study. When I take my study, I may consider all organizations who are people's based organizations, may be registered, not registered, as part of NGO. I may take civil society organizations as NGOs, or I may take organizations that are registered under the charity trust or the charity commissioner under the Trust Act or the Societies Registration Act as NGOs. So that also we need to operationalize and say that this, in my study, this particular concept is pertains to these things. When I so or if I give you another example, family. When I talk about joint family, in my study, what do I really mean by joint family? So that way you need to define what your concepts are. Each concept which is under study, whether it is a dependent or independent variable, you need to operationalize it for your particular study. You need to give in what is the traditional definition of that concept, and then in your study, what is the definition of that particular concept or how that concept is applicable in your study. The next important thing is the research design. Research design, as I already mentioned, it is a blueprint for your study. It will give you direction and it will try and, it will guide you in your research process. I need to go in really fast because otherwise I will not be able to complete. So there are different types of research designs. It could be descriptive, it could be exploratory, diagnostic, or experimental. When we talk about exploratory, it is we use exploratory when there is very little that is available on a particular issue. When there is no material or no literature available on one particular, we're trying to explore a new area, then we usually, or there is no earlier research conducted in that particular area, then we use the exploratory research. When we talk about descriptive research, what it helps us do is it helps us determine relationships between various factors. There could be it could be individuals, it could be groups or whatever. It could be group behavior. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to establish relationships between two different factors. For example, the number of years that an NGO has been in the field and the type of contribution it has been. That is what a description. Okay, these depending on the number of years, this is the correlation between the two things. So what we're trying to do is draw a relationship between different factors or different variables where we're describing a particular formula. We're not exploring, but if somebody has already explored it, but we are trying to put in new dimensions and put in explanations between the different factors that impact that particular area or that particular problem. The third one is diagnostic research. The diagnostic research is where we try and find out the root cause of a particular problem or a particular issue. The diagnostic research is mainly used in scientific research, but to some extent we try and use it in social work. It is not where we try and find out that what are the underlying causes or what are the underlying reasons for due to which problems occur, and then we try and find solutions to those problems. That is the diagnostic research. Then we move on to the experimental research. Experimental is generally used in natural sciences, where there is a control. All the things are in a control, where we say, the temperature is in control, the chemicals are in control, the quantity of chemicals is in control. So it is generally carried out in lab conditions. However, we can also use it in social sciences or social work, where we have two groups of sample under study, where one we call is the control group, second is the experimental group. For example, when if we are doing a study of changes in behavior due to training on hygiene with the children, then one would be a control group, where what we're trying to do is that in the control group, we do not do anything. We do not give them any input. But in the experimental group, what we do is we give them training. Supposing we give them training for 6 months. Then we conduct a research and we try and find out that the control group was not given any inputs. What is their level after 6 months? And the experimental group was given inputs, and what is the findings of that on that particular group, and then we try and draw a comparison and find out what was the impact of training. So that is what is experimental research. Now, when we talk about the this thing research process, the next step would be data collection. Now, as far as data collection is concerned, sampling is very important. First, we will determine that what is the kind of data collection methods that we're going to use, whether it is primary or secondary. Primary is direct data that we collect from the field. Secondary is that the data that is already existing. Now, there are several studies which do not directly collect data from the field. What they do is they draw their inferences based on secondary data or data which is already existing prior to that particular research. And from those various studies, they try and draw conclusions or they come to new findings. Now, if we have to collect primary data, sampling is an important part of it. When we talk about sampling, there are two important concepts that we need to understand. One is the universe, second is the population. Now, when I say that a study of the NGOs working on housing, my universe would be what? All the NGOs who are working in the area of housing in the city of Mumbai. Now, that particular universe, maybe around 900 NGOs in Mumbai are working on the issue of housing. That is my universe. But my study will not probably be able to cover all 900 agencies. Then what I need to do is I need to do sampling. So from that particular universe, I will select some particular NGOs based on certain criteria, and that will be my sample. Now, again, I will have to, depending on what the type of study I'm conducting, I will determine my sample size, whether it is 10%, 20%, whatever. And then accordingly, I will do my sampling. Now, while doing sampling, again, there are two methods. One is random, one is non-random. Now, in random method, what happens is every NGO out of the 900 NGO, there is a possibility of any NGO out of this 900 or every NGO being a part of my sample. Which is a very, what do you call, a scientific way of doing it, where there are no prejudices, no biases, or there are no conditions. The second is non-random, where what I do is on purpose, certain strategies are adopted, where I decide to choose that these are the NGOs I am going to choose. Supposing I classify them and then I say, I'm going to choose, say this particular organization because it has worked for a long period of time. So I'm going to choose. So this particularly happens in non-random is particularly used in research when we conduct with hidden populations. What do we mean by hidden populations? For example, people suffering from HIV/AIDS. The population is not very evident or it is not very open. So in that case, what I do is I know of say one particular or say two particular people who are suffering from HIV. So through them, I move on to the others. They give me contacts for the others. So that is called snowballing. So that's in that way in social work research we need to several in many times we need to also use non-random sampling. In random sampling again there are various ways which you can study with your in your course, go through it in detail. Now again there are once I decide that I have to collect data, I have to determine what are the methods I will use for now. It could be through observation. Observation doesn't mean that I just go there, sit there, and write whatever I feel like writing. Observation is also a very systematic method of data collection where I need to spell out and prepare a list of a data checklist of what all I'm going to observe, how I'm going to observe, how I'm going to record my observations. Another thing which you are all very familiar with is the interview schedule. Interview schedule is what that I prepare a form and then I go and conduct interviews, or I send the interview schedule online and ask someone to fill it on their own. Whatever. That is many times not feasible in social work because we deal with marginalized populations So many of them may not be able to read, they may not have access to technology, or so they may not be able to fill in soft copies or even write into it. So we usually go and conduct interviews. So for that we use interview schedules. And the third thing is also interview guides. So there are focus group discussion guidelines. So there, what are the different tools that I'm depending on the type of study, I will also develop my tools of data collection. Now, once the data has been collected, the next step is data processing. Now, what is data processing? First thing is I will edit data. Editing means what? Each interview schedule that comes back to me, I have to check each interview schedule, whether it is complete, whether it is not complete, whether there are some questions where, so sometimes in a hurry, two options may be marked where only one needs to be marked. So I will check all that. If there are any discrepancies, it needs to go back to the field for again clarification. Sometimes what happens is you also need to cross check when you're editing. Supposing I in a particular interview say that my income is 20,000 rupees. Now, in some say that comes in question 2, and now say in question 10, there is a question of what is your monthly expenditure, and I say that my monthly expenditure is 30,000. So these type of things you need to actually check. Or it's a very interesting case where I was doing a study. There was a question which asked, "Do you have children?" The answer was no. And when it's some in some other section, when it came to number of children, the number of children were mentioned as 3. So this is a major discrepancy. Either no is a wrong answer or 3 is a no answer. So all these things need to be clarified before you do anything with the data. So this is called data processing. You need to process data. There may be many open-ended questions in your questionnaire. You need to code those open-ended questions. You need to understand how many categories are there of answers in your question. Then you club them together. You give them code numbers, because ultimately after this data is processed, you need to enter the data for analysis. Then you enter data in your either in Excel sheets or your we have a special package for social work which is called SPSS, statistical package for social sciences. You will enter. That is a wonderful package which is available for social work research, where it is very easy to draw, get your frequency tables, correlation tables, or whatever you want, mean, median, mode. All that is done at the click of one click of the mouse. So after your data is cleaned and edited, you will enter it into the package, whatever you're using, that is called data entry. Then you will analyze your data. And what is data analysis? Data analysis is actually finding out what your data is talking about, or what are your findings. Once you know what your findings are, you will prepare your research report. I'm sorry for going very fast, but there are too many topics which I need to cover. So now I will also have to discuss the types of research. Now, you all know that there are two basic, I'm sure you must be knowing that there are two basic types of research: qualitative research and quantitative research. Now, when you talk about qualitative research, it is generally about numbers. You know, you interview 100 people, you interview 1,000 people, or whatever, and you try, and what you do, you try and generalize whatever findings you get to the other population, similar population as well. But when you talk about qualitative, you are not concerned about numbers. You're concerned about each individual response. You're concerned about the quality of responses. For example, if I conduct a case study on, say I'm doing a study of colleges of social work, I decide that I'm going to do follow a case study method, and I'm going to do one case in each district of Maharashtra. So that is the case study method, where I will do an in-depth study of that particular college, and then try and understand what is the quality of education that is provided, or whatever my objectives may be in that particular study. So that is case study. It could be with an institution. Your case could be an institution. Your case could be also an individual affected by, say, AIDS. I want to find out what are the different dimensions of the problems, what are the family societal issues, what is the issue of social stigma, what are the issues pertaining to family, what are the issues pertaining to livelihood, what are the issues pertaining to self-image, what are the health issues involved. So then, then it is an individual study. So a case study method could be used with organizations, it could be used with individuals, with communities also. So, your case could be anything, but it is a very in-depth study where numbers is not a concern. It is the case in under study who is your main concern. Now, it is another type of research is which we do in social work is needs assessment research. Needs assessment is that when we when we initiate any particular project, what we need to do is understand what are the needs of the stakeholders. Project we do not start because we feel that there is a need. Project is ultimately for the stakeholders. So it is important to do a needs assessment study before we undertake any task or we undertake any services or we provide any activities or strategies, whatever we do, before that it is important to understand what are the needs of that particular community, those particular group of people, or wherever you are going to start your project. You needs to do the first thing you need to do in social work is a needs assessment study. Now, another type of very important study is your participatory action research. Now, you may do a needs assessment, or if you feel that no, in a particular community, we will involve the people in the research. That is called a participatory research. But that research is not only for academic purpose, as also needs assessment is not for academic purpose. It is for practice. So in participatory research, what happens is with the help of the people, you try and understand the structure of that particular village or that particular community. You try and understand the problems of that particular community, and with their help, you try and develop strategies to improve the lives of the people. This is called participatory action research. Why action? Because people will be involved in the research and they will be involved in the action. So there is some action that is going to happen after the research. Then is the problem solving research. Problem solving research is when you are looking at a particular problem and you want to try and find out some solutions or answers to that particular problem. This is usually done when we need to give certain recommendations for policy making or for certain actions to the government, or when we file public interest litigations, because it's not just enough to identify problems, it is also important to find solutions to those problems. So these are research studies that we conduct for, for finding solutions to problems. Then one very important type of research in social work is the evaluation research. It is not just important to work, it is also important to understand how the work has, how impactful the work has been, or what is the contribution that our particular that a project has made, or how far the project has been able to resolve people's issues, for people's problems. So that is why evaluation research is very important. It helps us to understand whether a particular project has been helpful, how effective it has been able to be in the area where it has been implemented, how far the project has been able to achieve its objectives. So also in terms of government programs, there were several government agencies, as I just mentioned, Minority Commission research we had carried out. They also so involve social work institutions or social work researchers in assessment studies, where where they want to understand that how far their schemes have been useful or impactful or effective, how far their programs have been impactful. So these are the different types of assessment or evaluation research studies that we conduct. Then is the cost benefit analysis, where it is a type of research where we try and find out that what is the cost that we have put in and what is the benefit that we've got out of it. Cost again does not necessarily mean only in terms of money. It means in terms of time, it means in terms of human resources, whatever resources we've put in, and then putting in those resources, whether the benefit that has been incurred out of it is helpful or no. Now, in all these studies, there is a scope for further improvement in our strategies. Supposing we find out from evaluation studies or from cost benefit that our project is not being beneficial, so it helps us draw new strategies. So these are all practical based research studies. But again, we also conduct several academic research studies in social work, which gives us an insight into new concepts, new theories, and new ideas. So it also helps us build theoretical foundations and makes them stronger. Again, then, as I told you, that if we are studying a particular case research, we are conducting research on a particular NGO. That may also help us to draw new theory. We may there are supposing X number of models of uh, community organization. We may be able to invent a new model of social work as well, which happens in the Western countries. In India, contextual research is still lagging behind, and we've not really been able to develop indigenous literature as such. We are very, very heavily dependent on Western literature. Even all the Marathi literature or books, if we take in libraries, or even the Hindi books, those are all literal translations from Hindi literature. So we also need to develop our indigenous base. So research plays an extremely crucial and important role in social work. It is an important part of the continuum of theory, practicum, and research. These all feed into one another. So I think I have tried to be as concise as possible and cover as many areas as I could. But if there are any relevant questions, I'll be happy to take them on. Are there any questions? Questions? Okay. So if there are no questions, I think we can stop here. And thank you all for being there. Research is a little dry and technical topic. So if you go through the study material, probably it will be more helpful. So in for the second session, if you come a little prepared, you will probably be able to ask questions, and it will be more meaningful to you. I don't think there are any questions. Still, let me just check. 9. Okay, thank you all. Yes, see now there is a big dilemma in terms of in terms of the language, because if we conduct in Hindi, the students want it in English. When we conduct it in English, students want it in Hindi. So it's not possible to have it in both languages. So that is one question that has come. So I'm addressing that. So I'm extremely sorry, but there is not much that I can do about it. So language is always an area of concern. बट अगली बार आप हिंदी में अगर सवाल पूछेंगे तो मैं अपना स्टडी मटेरियल स्टडी करके तो मैं जरूर जवाब देने की कोशिश करूंगी. धन्यवाद. थैंक यू सो मच एवरीवन.